It's hard to not have AI as part of that conversation. Dr. Google, Dr. Claude, Dr. Gemini are sitting there.
Hmm.
Are they doctors? No. Are they intelligent? No. Are they good at stringing sentences together? Yes. Are they good at looking at large amounts of data and pattern recognition? Absolutely. Can they do things that we can't do? Absolutely.
Your health is shaped by more than symptoms. Through real stories and expert insights, we explore how your genetics, environment, and daily choices affect your well being. We uncover root causes and share practical tools to help you find the healing you need. Welcome to the Forum Health Integrative Medicine Podcast.
You guys probably aren't used to me as the exclusive host, and I'm terrible at it. But I'm looking forward to a great conversation with Dr. Weatherby. Dicken Weatherby is joining us. He's from Optimal DX, naturopathic physician. You said 34 years in Oregon since you've started school, I assume. And I'm especially excited for this topic because this is where we get the information about what's going on
Right.
with our bodies.
Well,
So tell me.
one of the areas that we get
Yeah,
information
I
from,
know
but
for sure.
I
Yeah,
think it's
one
a
of the
very
areas.
key area. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And perhaps one of the areas that we maybe over focus on, because that's what medicine has pushed us to do, is
Yeah.
to over focus on objective data and then to pigeonhole it in a way where it's not as useful as it could be. And I think that's what's
Yeah.
exciting about what Optimal DX has done. So why don't you start out by telling us about Optimal DX? Let's start there.
Yeah, so Optimal DX is an online software platform for practitioners. And, I've been in the field for a long time and I've really dedicated my work to be working with practitioners. So I want to make that very, very clear that this is a practitioner-centric web platform. And basically what we do is we take patient standard blood work, so the same chem screen, CBC you're already ordering, and we run it through an analysis engine that interprets the biomarkers against what we call functional optimal ranges instead of the lab's reference ranges. And what comes out is what we call a functional health report. It's anywhere from 50 to 60 pages, presents biomarkers on a scale of optimal, above and below optimal, above and below standard. So you kind of get a nice graphical view very quickly of where that biomarker lies within a range. And then we do an assessment layer where we're flagging patterns of dysfunctions, areas of nutrient needs, all those sorts of things. And then we take all of that information and we provide a list of what we call health concerns. Now we have to be very careful that we're not diagnostic here, and we're not treating disease per se. So we generate a list of what we call health concerns, which these are really areas of support that we feel that the practitioner should be paying attention to. And then they can take those health concerns and using a treatment plan builder, start building out a bespoke treatment plan for the patient based upon supplements. So we are also integrated with FullScript, Designs for Health, and we have a small database of some of the bigger companies in terms of their product lines. And then we recently have an AI assisted recommended actions, so diet, lifestyle, and exercise that are built on a big database of knowledge that we've been building up over the last 2 years. So you take all of that, build a bespoke, very personalized treatment plan for the patient, and then that gets encoded into a health improvement plan. So the way I kind of describe it, I hate to use kind of like a sausage analogy, but basically we're taking raw material, the same lab work, the same lab report, extract the biomarker data, and we create at the end a pretty strong action plan for the practitioner to present and use with their patient. We're used by thousands of practitioners in 87 different countries, and we're working closely with about 280 different biomarkers, including quite a lot of functional calculations and ratios and things like that that we calculate within the software itself. So you can actually take a standard chem screen of 105 biomarkers, and with all the ratios and things, we bulk that up to about 140
Oh, wow.
and then use that. So, we do all the work for you. So you're not having to sit there and work out what the free T3 to reverse T3 ratio is, or the HOMA 2 scoring, quickie, and all that kind of stuff. We do it all for you. So,
Right. For our patient listeners, I think it would be nice to help them understand the difference between a normal reference range and what's optimal. Speak to that a little bit for me, because I don't think
yeah,
patients
I think
understand.
that, the real thing that underlines it is that standard lab interpretations, I think, are actually often sort of incomplete. So we took like how the ranges get built. So a standard reference range. So if you're looking at let's say a report from Quest or LabCorp or from your hospital, the ranges that you're seeing are very specific to that particular lab. And believe it or not, they change. For instance, I always say this stuff. I could be in Maryland, for instance. I could get my blood drawn in Maryland at a local hospital and get my chemistry and CBC. I can take the exact same blood, fly it to Los Angeles, have a lab in Los Angeles do it, and the ranges would be completely different. And the reason for that is that they're based on statistical ranges.
That's
So
right.
the lab takes everyone who gets tested. So the Maryland lab will be using a Maryland database of patients. The LA lab will be using an LA, and they trim the top and bottom a few percent and call the rest normal. But the people really getting their blood drawn are not a healthy population. They
Right.
might be healthy for the biomarker that they're looking at, but in general, that's not a healthy population. So you're really being compared against what we call a sick average. And then I think the second thing that's really different is conventional interpretation reads markers one at a time. So if you've had that experience sitting in with your primary, and they're going through, well, your cholesterol looks good, your blood glucose is normal, that they're looking at it one biomarker at a time in isolation against a statistical range. Whereas what we do in functional medicine approach is really, where does that marker sit within a tighter optimal range? So we have that little gray area between optimal and the high or low. And to me, that's what's happening within the physiology of the patient. And then also, how does that biomarker interact with other biomarkers around it? And I think really it's those two things is where I think the clinical story lives. And I think it's when you have that ability to be able to look at blood work outside of just the standard range that they're looking at, and then also the interconnectedness between blood biomarkers. I think there's a huge story to be told and
Yeah,
uncovered.
absolutely. The examples that I'll use with my patients, because I'll say, yeah, I know you're normal, but that's not the goal. The goal is not
Yeah,
normal.
right. The goal is not to be
We,
normal.
we have a region close to us that there's a lot of oil work. There's a lot of, I would say blue collar work. And when patients get their lab work done here in Utah Valley, the reference ranges for the AST and ALT are quite low.
Interesting.
36 and 38 or 36 and 42. But if they were to go just 3 hours away to where a bunch of roughnecks are working on oil rigs all the time, the reference range for AST and ALT, now these are the things that measure your liver function.
Liver enzymes,
The
right?
reference
Yeah.
range goes up to 78.
Holy
Well,
cow.
why
Well,
is that?
there you go. Thank
Well,
you
the
for
difference
sharing that.
is that in Utah County, almost no one drinks alcohol. And
Right.
up here,
Interesting.
they're all drinking alcohol, right? And so when people will see their liver enzymes go up to 52, they're like, is my liver going to make it? And I'm like, well, yeah, probably so. Let's just figure out what it is. What are you taking that's irritating your liver? You're not going to die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But and I think this is a better example. The reference range for testosterone for women has historically been done based on that we test women that are over 50. So of course it's going to be low. It can't possibly be optimal. If you're comparing yourself to another 57-year-old woman, it's going to be low, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we built the reference range in this bell curve based on women that are 25 to 35, we'd have a totally different set of numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's great. And I think that what you are doing by both figuring out what is optimal rather than what's normal, and then the real key, and I think this is even harder, this is elusive even to physicians, is saying, well, but we can't look at these as individual single things. It would be like looking at words individually and asking what they mean rather than poetry and what it means when you string
Yeah.
the word.
Hey, I'm getting lots of great analogies here. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic, and both for physicians, because maybe we've been trained in the one thing at a time approach, and for patients, because now they can actually get something it's truly going to be a guide.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the patients. Patients come in and I presume that you've seen patients through your career, and they come to you because they feel dismissed because they've been told that their labs are normal, and yet something's still wrong.
Yeah. It's like they're told everything looks fine, but they still feel terrible.
Yeah.
I
What
think
areas in there do you say, oh yeah, this is often something that our tool can help? Is it with their
it can help
nutrients? Is it with
everywhere.
thyroid,
I
their
mean,
hormones? What things do you find are most powerful?
At Forum Health, we uncover the why behind your symptoms. With advanced lab testing, hormone optimization, and cutting-edge therapies, we help you heal and perform your best. And now, through shopforumhealth.com, you can access physician-grade supplements trusted by our providers, supporting everything from adrenal health to focus and longevity. Learn more at forumhealth.com and explore supplements at shopforumhealth.com.
Well, let's take a look at thyroid. I think that's a really good one, right? So because I think the thyroid lends itself to probably the number one symptom that most people are experiencing, which is fatigue and low energy and also
Yeah.
weight gain. So let's say a patient's TSH 4.2, the lab cutoff is around 4.5. They're considered to be normal. The physician will look at that and go, your thyroid is normal. But when they start looking at things symptomatically, they're off, right? So they are clearly symptomatic of some. They may not have overt Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroiditis at that particular time, but their thyroid is not functioning properly.
Yeah, they're cold and tired, and they're saying, "What's wrong? I just feel so tired, and
Yeah.
my husband won't let me turn up the thermostat, and
Yeah,
but my
exactly.
doc says I'm normal."
Yeah, so functionally, I would say, and this is backed by quite extensive research that we've done in the field, I think that you would want to have your TSH high ones, low twos. The patient isn't imagining their fatigue, but the measurement system isn't really designed to catch that early drift, right? So, and I think that's the point is also, and as we should have mentioned this earlier, I think one of the powers of looking at biomarkers this way too is trend analysis. It's not about just a snapshot of where you are today, which of course gives you a lot of really amazing information, but really it's the drift, it's the trend. Are you trending towards diabetes, thyroiditis, whatever it is, or are you trending towards, relatively being optimal? In fact, glucose is probably one of those great ones to look at because
Sure.
you could do a snapshot of someone's glucose and they're, 92, which I think is still starting to drift a little bit too high. And then if you look at historically, they've, over the last 5 years, they've been, 82 to 84 to 85, slowly creeping up. That tells you one story. But if
Right.
they suddenly come in at 97, and then you've seen their glucose last time was 87, but it's only been about 6 months, that tells another story. That's much more of an acute progression.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important too, is being able to evaluate biomarkers and the trends of biomarkers and the trends of patterns over time. So I think that going back to that thyroid issue is I think that the measurement system that standard medicine is using, because of the statistical ranges that they're looking at, I think it really doesn't catch that early drift. And I hate to use a car analogy, but our car analogies are actually pretty good. I would say this is a check engine light issue, right?
Right.
The conventional medicine is waiting for the warning light. Functional medicine is reading the gauges before the lights ever come on.
Well, I
And
think you're being more kind to conventional medicine than I would be. I suspect that oftentimes conventional medicine is waiting for you to break down at the side of the road. But
yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, I mean, yes, I am being kind, but yeah. Yeah, so it's a sad state of affair. In fact, one of my early mentors always talked about this concept of the nightmare of yet. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't
Right.
have diabetes yet,
Oh,
so we're
yeah.
gonna wait until you do, and then we know what to do with it. We've got
Absolutely.
metformin, we've got insulin, we've got everything that we know when we know that we have a disease to treat.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
it's
you don't
crazy.
have a
Because you have all these
gallbladder
things
disease
and you
yet.
try to treat it and you're like, "Oh, the insurance won't pay for that treatment." Why
Right.
not? You're not sick enough. Come back in
Yeah.
6 months when you're sicker, and then they'll pay for it.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah.
Mind-boggling. Yeah, we're
But I
gonna
think
wait
that's also why
until we
patients
have
are
to take
taking
your
this.
gallbladder out, right?
Yeah, they're saying, "We're gonna take control. I'm not
Right.
gonna wait." And
Right.
and they're finding that this sort of intransigence of the industry of medicine and their insurance, and they're just saying, "No, wait, I'm not gonna wait for that.
Mhm.
If I can do it with an herb, I'll do that. Or if I have to get a compounded medicine, I'll just pay for it myself. But I'm going to treat this because, yeah, the optimal DX has shown me that I'm trending in the wrong direction, and that's a problem. And yeah, sure, I don't have diabetes yet, but even if I have very
Yeah.
early prediabetes, let's be proactive.
Heck
So
yeah,
I think
absolutely. There's
I think
tons and tons. I mean, I think the problem is they don't know what to do.
right. Yeah.
I mean, really, they wouldn't know what to do, and I think that that's part of the education that we do for MDs that are coming and working with us. That, and I think one of the wonderful things that's happening in medicine right now is that functional medicine is having its day in the sun, and I think a lot of practitioners are realizing, wait, hold on, it's a check engine light issue. It's a that kind of thing, as opposed to let's wait until the car's broken down.
Yeah.
But they're scrambling. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to treat it. And sadly, a lot of it is what we call green allopathic medicine. Oh, we're not going to give you metformin, but we're going to give you berberine. We're going to use it in exactly the same way, but
Yeah.
we're going to use it in a green way,
Right. Yeah.
which I guess is fine. But it's
No, I
like,
actually love that term. It's you think of it as, well, it's a step in the right direction, but really, is it? Or is it just is have we not changed the mindset? We're
well,
just saying,
it's yeah,
here's
you're right, Andrew. It's like
no. Yeah.
the philosophy has not changed.
Right. And that's what the underlying philosophy has to change for there really to be a resurgence of health.
I
We
think
can't
we
just
have to,
substitute a
but
pharmaceutical thing. Yeah.
don't we have to like get to a point where we recognize that you don't just wake up one morning as a diabetic. You
Right.
might actually wake up one morning as a diabetic because at that point you're getting diagnosed as a diabetic. But the trend towards being a diagnosed diabetic is a long one. Why don't we have ways to be able to assess it ahead of time?
Yeah.
There was an analogy that I used. My family lives in East Anglia, and we went to an island just off the coast of Suffolk, where in the 1950s, the US government came and they put in the first over the horizon radar detection
Mm.
so that they could actually detect Russian missiles before they were actually able to see them kind of in the sky. And it was amazing technology at the time. Obviously, this is way beyond. So I'm kind of looking at what we do is like seeing over the horizon.
Yeah.
We're seeing things that are emerging long before they actually turn into the disease that gets treated
Right.
allopathically. And so this is really early warning detection systems. It's the red light, it's the light bulb, whatever analogy you want to use. And people, some practitioners that are new to what we do look at the report and go, holy cow, my patient's about to die, because all the warning lights are going off,
Right.
right?
Right.
Multiple systems are out of balance. So we have to like kind of work with them and go, wait, hold on. This is not about disease. This is not
Right.
about, they're not going to die. This is you using your clinical judgment to tease out what you know about the patient, to start putting a plan to bring all of this back into balance, back into optimal. And part of that is recognizing the interrelationships between the patterns that you're looking at as well, the metabolic map, so to speak, of the human body.
Right.
So it's very
Well,
exciting work.
that's really the paradigm change that is happening, and it's interesting because I think it's coming from the patients more so even than it's coming from practitioners that have had their eyes open, and that is we should not be looking at disease because you shouldn't get there. We're looking at health. And what you're describing, because you just said, no, they don't have a disease. Yeah, they don't. Their health is slipping, and so let's focus on the health, which is
Mhm.
which is a totally different way to look at it, right? It's like it's spending enough time with your spouse, going on a date periodically, writing a note and saying "I love you," rather than waiting until you need either a divorce law or marriage counseling. Right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
that proactive approach to your health and just saying, "Oh, yeah, I know I like to eat, Reese's peanut butter cups, but I notice that if I do it very often, it's not good for me. I like to have a glass of wine, but it looks like if I do this very often, it's not good for me. So I'm going to simply do it less."
Yeah,
Right? Now, some
yeah,
things you have to do not at all, but some things you can simply say, "Oh, I have to moderate that if I want to be healthy," as
yeah,
opposed to
true.
waiting until the doctor finally says, "Well, today's the day you actually have diabetes." You've
Mhm.
been trending towards that for 25 years. So,
And I think one of the sad things too, is that oftentimes people have gone down the allopathic route, not getting the results that they want, and they've almost waited too long to come and see a functional medicine practitioner,
right.
and they're now expecting us to be miracle workers, and that's a really difficult situation. And I've seen the trend in my profession. I graduated 28 years ago, and I've seen the progression in my field, naturopathic medicine, to be more geared towards pharmaceuticals, peptides, injectables, more
Right.
heroic methods than I ever had when I was
Right.
first starting out. And I think that's partly because A lot of the patients are waiting until it's a little bit too late. And hey, berberine ain't going to cut it. Unfortunately, maybe they do need a short course of metformin, in order
Right.
to kind of put the metabolic brake on. So I would say if you're a patient out there listening to this and you're experiencing, some of these symptoms that are not necessarily connected by a regular medical profession, go find someone trained in functional medicine because they are designed to look sort of between the cracks, in the cracks between the systems, and are really good at finding out what's potentially going on with you and
Yeah.
helping you make that correction early.
Yeah. And slow work is good work, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Sometimes we'll do something heroic, but that the process of getting healthy is still going to take a while, and that's good. It's like learning to play the piano or learning a new sport. Don't expect to be great at it after
Yeah.
6 weeks in a lesson with, even if you invested the time to sign up for the lessons and you're going to do the thing, you're still not going to be amazing at it right away. And that's your health is make
Yeah.
some big changes if you want to, but just make those small incremental changes on an ongoing basis and you'll
Yeah.
regain your health.
Yeah.
So,
One of
so
my
we've
men.
already sort of talked about this, how functional medicine connects the dots.
Mhm.
Anything else that you would say with respect to either normal TSH versus symptomatic hypothyroidism, iron, ferritin patterns? Are there things where have examples of connecting these dots of I feel this way, my labs say I'm normal, but there's a
Yeah, I mean, you bring ferritin up is such an interesting one because, the range for ferritin is incredibly wide.
oh yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculously wide. And, so you might have a woman coming in ferritin level of 18, the
mhm.
low normal is 13, let's say. Doctor takes a look at it, goes, "Yeah, you're fine." "Are you?" "No." I mean, your
As long as
storage of
long as you
iron
don't have
is
a period this month, she'll be fine. But as soon as
right,
you
but
lose
her hair
significant
is
bit of iron,
falling
you're out of
out, she's freezing, she's
yeah,
she's borderline anemic. I mean, she probably
right,
is anemic from our window. I think, ferritin is an interesting one. Iron is an interesting one. Ferritin on its own, I think, can fool people. It's an acute phase reactant, as we know. It rises
right.
with
What would you say about
inflammation.
high ferritin?
It's an inflammatory marker.
And
And
is there a normal high that you'd still say, okay, they're at, I don't know, 420 or something?
that's a little bit too high for me. But
Yeah.
I would look at it in connection with obviously their symptomology. Are we seeing, are you having, joint pain, muscle ache? I mean, is the signs of like fire in your joints and that sort of thing? Is inflammation, symptomatic at that point, or is it subclinical inflammatory systems that may or not necessarily be raising their ugly head? Uh, but I'd also look at some of the other patterns of inflammation. I mean, fibrinogen is another one. It's another acute phase reaction that can, start to rise when there's inflammation. HSCRP is another one of those. Again, I think the standard range for HSCRP is too high. I think it
Right. I
needs
think
to
it
be
goes up
lower.
to
I think
3.
0.75 for men and
Right.
1.3, I think, for females. So you're starting to look at, what are some of the additional biomarkers that inform us around an inflammatory process in the body, and are those elevated? Another issue with ferritin potentially is iron storage issues. So for males especially, I wouldn't say it's necessarily genetic hemochromatosis, but it's, I have seen that definitely where they might be drinking well water that's got a lot of iron in it. They're cooking their, marinara sauces in cast iron. They're getting a lot of leaching of the iron. In fact, one of my very first patients I ever had when I was in practice, I made the mistake of not looking at his labs before he came in. This was long before the software and the work I was doing at that time. And he came in, his ferritin was 1,800.
Oh, wow.
And he was, yeah, my face, I, so had my consult with him. And I looked down and go, holy cow.
Yeah.
Luckily, his ALT was like a 250. So I knew that there was, definitely some issues there. And we,
Oh, my word.
sent him out for some more in depth. And he definitely was, in fact, he was genetically had a very mild SNP for hemochromatosis. So he was absorbing and holding onto iron that was starting to affect his liver. And, some
Right.
routine
So you
phlebotomy
started
kind of
doing
helps.
some phlebotomy and
Yeah. Yeah.
told them to
But,
stop using the cast iron.
The other one would be just sort of anemia in general. We always focus so much on iron deficiency anemia, but, there is the other forms of nutrient
Hmm.
anemias with vitamin B12. A low hemoglobin will tell you that the patient is anemic. And it's always interesting to me that practitioners are looking just at the CBC and using that as a diagnosis of anemia, whereas you really need to know what is the anemia. It's
Sure.
like just saying someone's anemic is like, yeah,
Right. Is it
okay,
microcytic? Is it
right. Macrocytic,
less?
microcytic. Is it iron? Is it, there's tons and tons of different kinds. So then, you're looking at the MCV level, low MCV, high MCV, small,
So
obviously pointing towards iron, large pointing towards vitamin B12 and that sort of thing.
And then because you see these patterns, then you can make recommendations that are going to make a difference in their nutrients, and they can just consistently and slowly improve without
Yeah,
having to do anything heroic because they're not
yeah,
coming in exhausted when they have a severe anemia. You're not having the
yeah,
risk of a transfusion or something.
right.
Talk to me about this because I take care of a lot of patients that have chronic fatigue secondary to Lyme or mold or long COVID, Epstein-Barr, those sorts of things. Inflammation markers. I do, and maybe you'll say, yeah, we don't really pay attention to that, and that's fine. I wouldn't expect that you should, but I do a lot of chronic inflammatory response panel testing with TGF beta 1, VEGF, MSH. Are those markers that your software is looking at as well, or is that maybe not
We
because it's such an esoteric, uncommon test?
Yeah, it is. It is. We have some of them in mostly just to be able to, include those in what we call our blood test results. So you
Mhm.
can actually see them. We're not plotting them against optimal because, in most cases, they're
Right.
pathology markers. Is there an optimal level of those biomarkers? I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
maybe we could have that conversation offline, but
Sure.
you know, I think the other interesting thing in this work that I've been doing for so long is the number of in-depth panels that practitioners are running nowadays. I
Right.
mean, this must be
Yeah.
costing
Do
the
I even
patients.
need to do that? Because if I did this other thing, maybe that would give me the same data.
Yeah, and I think that the trend nowadays is to potentially over-test, and this was something that we were talking about, I think even before we got on the call,
Mhm.
this idea that we need to be testing thousands of different
Yep.
biomarkers in the hope that, something's going to show up. And again, I mean, I keep talking about these, I had these amazing mentors when I was at naturopathic medicine. And one of them sticks to me. He said, never order a blood test unless you know what to do when that blood test is out of range.
Right,
If,
right.
if you can't tell me what you would do if someone has a VEGF of whatever, don't
Mhm.
run it, because what you're doing is you're shooting in the dark. You're costing your patients a lot of money, potentially for a test that maybe not actually that helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that to you, obviously, but I'm saying that to a lot of the practitioners out there because believe it, I mean, I see incredible panel. I mean, these must be costing thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I wonder sometimes, more is not better. Mo ain't better. It's I think we can do a lot with, you know, just I wouldn't say a basic panel, but a really decent comprehensive panel. And then if those results are coming back and you're still not really sure what is driving that inflammation, run an ANA, run a, rheumatoid factor, but
Right.
use
Yeah.
that
Finding information is
discretion.
not hard. Finding information is not hard. When I find those values useful, for example, if a person has Bartonella,
Yeah.
they likely have a very high VEGF. And they're going to have to pay out of pocket to do a test for Bartonella, and that test is going to cost them $800, and their insurance will cover a VEGF, right? So
Hmm.
that's the sort of usefulness. But to find inflammation, well, they're going to have a high SED rate, they're going to have a high CRP, they're going to have something is going to show up, ferritin, and you already know they have inflammation because they told you their joints hurt and they're swollen, right?
Right.
So here's one that I think is useful for our listeners. Cortisol. Talk to me about cortisol because there are so many people that are afraid of it and they think it should be low. And then there are people that I think understand the range and that sort of thing. And then there are people that when it's high, they're like, well, I feel good here. So talk to me about that a little bit. What's your opinion
Well,
on?
I think, the issue is the testing methodology that you're using to measure cortisol. Obviously, we're a blood chemistry lab, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we're not a lab, we're an analysis system
Right.
around blood. As soon as you put a needle in someone's arm, their cortisol levels are going to spike,
That's
right?
what you
So
think.
just
Yeah.
subjectively, the actual act of testing somebody, you're going to get a cortisol increase. Now, do they build that into the range? Maybe. I don't know. Then we have diurnal variations. When is that cortisol taken? So I think cortisol from the blood is actually a little tricky because of so many variables that go into the level itself. We do what we call kind of almost like a total cortisol, or the AM cortisol is kind of what we would prefer if we were going to be able to do testing, because most patients are, I would say about 85% of blood panels that get loaded into the software are fasting. So we can presume that if there's a cortisol there, that it's going to be on a fasting sample. Now, occasionally we'll get, one where, there's someone has also done an afternoon cortisol on the same day, then they can add that in, and now we've got an AM and a PM cortisol. So I think the testing methodology is slightly problematic. Now, of course,
It
then
is
the
the time of day, whether
time
they
of day.
ate, what they did for the 3 days previous. There's so much that goes into that.
Yeah. So, but then, we're not doing salivary cortisol. When I was in school, obviously, I think the first what was it called? ASA? Adrenal stress, no, ASI, adrenal stress index, was kind of developed in the mid-90s, where they were doing the four
the 4
cortisol.
point saliva
Yeah,
cortisol.
with the
Yeah.
DHEA, and then you got that that very
Yep.
classic graph. I
Right.
think that's actually a really almost potentially a better way. And then you've got dried urine, and
Right.
then there's the cortisol derivatives and all of that stuff. So it's a little tricky. I would say that it's an important biomarker to look at in terms of sort of overall metabolic function. I think you can look at the interactions of cortisol with other biomarkers. I think a classic one will be looking at it in the context of thyroid as well. So let's say a patient comes in low normal thyroid, and they have a relatively high cortisol from chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
The cortisol is doing two things there. It's impairing the conversion of T4 into active T3.
Right.
So maybe pushing that T4 more towards reverse T3. One of the nice things, we do the free T3 to reverse T3 ratio, which you can kind of see what that's looking like. And at the same time, too, I think high cortisol is suppressing TSH centrally. So you kind of got two things going on, is that the cortisol is really impacting on the thyroid function. So
Does your algorithm look at it in the context of DHEA as well?
yes, yeah, it does. Typically, you're seeing, high cortisol, low DHEA, high DHEA, it tends to have that. And we do the DHEA to cortisol ratios, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anywhere near as comprehensive as it is if you're doing salivary or sort of sequential urine testing over time. But
At this point,
it's a very nice
that's
snapshot.
not something that could be submitted to your tool. Like if that data existed, that's not something that Optimal DX can analyze.
No,
That's something that you
it's
guys
a very,
do
I was very
works?
clear when I first got into this work, is like, I realized that there was, a lot of these esoteric, what we call sort of esoteric, or, the
Yeah.
Genova,
That's right. Those
Genova
lab
tests.
developed tests. Yeah.
And I very clearly said, there's a lot of work still to be done in blood, so I'm just going to stick in that lane. And there are some
Gotcha.
really amazing people out there that do the other stuff. So
Right.
I'm not doing Lyme or any of that, So yeah, I look at this as that first test that everybody should get done. It's a first pass. It's a really good general view how the metabolic systems are functioning in this body. It's a
And do you
functional
have
physiological work.
is there a particular, is there a menu of, you can do the basic or the more complex? You said there's 180 biomarkers.
If I knew now, what I know when I was building the software, I would probably build it in a slightly different way. I started building this in 2011, and so
Okay.
the field has really has emerged, and like I said, it's tons more biomarkers than I ever imagined putting into the software back then.
Right.
One of the things that the software doesn't do is it doesn't judge the biomarkers and then kind of make an assessment. It's like the more you put in there, the better the output is going to be. So it is based, the assessment side is probably based around, I think, 110 biomarkers that we're looking at. And these are all the very, I would say, relatively common biomarkers that we're looking at that provide the
More like a
pattern recognition.
CMP, CBC, thyroid, a full
Yeah, then
thyroid panel that
pretty
includes the
detailed
T4, the
hormones,
T3.
pretty detailed thyroid,
Okay. Right.
a lot of cardiometabolic markers.
Are there labs that would point towards Graves, like the TSI?
Yeah, definitely TSI. So we're looking at, I think the
There's probably not a
TSR
lot left
antibody.
out on the thyroid side,
No, the thyroid's pretty comprehensive.
all the
You know,
way
we
comprehensive.
we actually did quite an interesting. Uh, I'm going to do a little segue here for those of you sort of biochemistry nuts, but I don't know if you know, but every lab in the world has a different way of looking at the thyroid antibodies.
Oh, no, I didn't
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. So we built a way to be able to actually handle the ranges of different labs. And we now, I think, have about 190 different labs that we don't work with personally, but we
know.
extract data from their
Yeah, you
PDFs.
analyze their
We
data.
analyze it. I mean, anybody can put in results from any lab, but basically what we're doing is if you use a lab in Mumbai and you're a software subscriber, you can submit that lab report to us and we'll build a template to be able to extract the data from it. Now, that lab in Mumbai is probably running on standard international units and probably is running weird and wonderful unit. I mean, the whole world of the interconnectedness between just biomarker results
Right.
globally is enough to blow your head open, but we handle it. And one of the things that we noticed was that there was no standard range or unit or way of expressing thyroid antibodies. So this is the
Interesting.
thyroglobulin antibodies and thyroid peroxidase. So in terms of being able to do an analysis of those, it's not because you're looking at apples, pears, cherries, bananas. So we went I went deep into the research and we came up with this concept called the thyroid antibody index, where we can take whatever the result is, whatever the range is, and we can put a standard index on it so that you are looking at the same fruit in every
Oh,
single
wow.
country. So, and I've written a few articles on it in the software. So now we are able to actually standardize thyroid antibodies, and now being able to do an algorithmic analysis of those standardized indexes to give you a sense of how far are those thyroid antibodies straying away from the range, to
Sure.
give
Or
you a
has it
sense.
improved based on that you had the patient cut out gluten or take low-dose naltrexone or what have you, right? Like, as if they're going to different labs, they'd never know.
They would never know.
Right.
Because I tell you what, it's like you go to a lab in Australia and the normal for thyroid peroxidase is 0 to 36. You go
Right.
to Quest, it's 0 to 1. You go to some lab in Mumbai, it's 0 to 4.11. You go to a lab in Durban, South Africa, it's 0 to 13. But
Wow.
now we can standardize it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So there's definitely work we're doing within the software itself that I think is I think fairly groundbreaking in terms of how we can help you, the practitioner, make better sense of what's going on.
Right.
And the thyroid is definitely one of those areas I think we do a really good job. Female hormones, that is a tricky thing to work with because of menstrual
Sure.
variabilities. And yeah,
Yeah.
so we sad to say is that I haven't found a way to really be able to crack the assessment side of female hormone analysis through blood. We can do testosterone because that
I would
doesn't
assume, though,
necessarily.
that you're still feeling that your tool is useful. It's just a matter of the practitioner actually has to have a little bit more sense because there are so many things going on. They have to ask all those questions of where were
Yeah,
you in your cycle? And they have to look at the patient and say, well, she looks estrogen dominant. And they have to know, oh, she has a family history of PCOS at least. And they're putting all this together and you can't get that data, which makes it really hard for your tool to do all of this. But your tool
yeah,
would still make the practitioner more powerful if they have those things in their head, because that's how we practice medicine, is this
yeah,
thin slicing that we don't even realize. I'm looking at the patient and I know she's 37 and she's been pregnant twice and she has acne, and all of that is going to play into how I
yeah. It's
look at
like
her
all of these
progesterone.
light bulbs are going off. So
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yeah,
And
we
so
can definitely
the
help in that
software can't
aspect.
do all of that, but it would still make the doctor's ability to look at the data a little bit more powerful than if they
Yes,
just took it raw.
yes, yes, exactly. Yeah,
Well, this has been really great. I think what you've done is fantastic. Certainly for practitioners, because I'll let the secret out. I let it out over and over. We're not as smart as you think we are. If you're a patient listening, we're not as smart as you think we are. We're not as smart as we wish we were, right? And so every tool that we can have at our disposal as practitioners to improve our ability to help you become healthy, we need those tools. And this is a tool that I think most physicians would really benefit from. So, last question. Let's wrap up with this, unless you have any other parting words. But where do you see the future of this? Where do you see the future for patients in being able to get better data and personalize their health?
It's hard to not have AI as part of that conversation. Dr. Google, Dr. Claude, Dr. Gemini are sitting there.
Hmm.
Are they doctors? No. Are they intelligent? No. Are they good at stringing sentences together? Yes. Are they good at looking at large amounts of data and pattern recognition? Absolutely. Can they do things that we can't do? Absolutely. But I think that last part of what you were talking about around the estrogen side of the conversation that we were just having, I think is really important, because you were talking about the clinician's judgment, experience, and everything, the intuition,
Hmm.
things that we as practitioners have learned and absorbed over the years that we've been doing this work. And I would say even a new practitioner coming out of residency has got 8 years of experience under their belt. They've
That's
seen a
right.
lot.
Yeah.
So if you're a patient out there thinking that you don't necessarily need to go see a practitioner because AI can do it, I would say, please, please, please stop thinking that way, because you really need to have a human being at the other end to have a really nuanced conversation around what's going on, because the practitioner that you're working with is going to be able to make sense, provide context, provide judgment, provide experience, all of the things that an AI engine is not going to be able to do. And the other thing about an AI agent is it's sycophantic. It's going to want to give you what you want it to hear unless you train it well. And believe
Right.
me, most people aren't training their AI that way.
No, because they love that. They love that.
Yeah, yeah. So if
That's
you
a
can
great
imagine,
idea.
if you exactly, if you can imagine, if you're someone that's really interested in your health and you're sitting there with ChatGPT every night typing in all of the things that you're dealing with, ChatGPT is absorbing all of that, putting it into memory, and now you upload a lab, it's going to use all of the previous conversations as your friend to
Yeah.
look at that lab result, and it's going to give you exactly what you think it's going to say. And
Yeah.
the thing is, you run that same lab on someone else's AI, it's going to give you a completely different interpretation.
Yep.
You come to my software and you put exactly the same lab in week after week after week, it's going to give you the same report, because it's not built on AI, it's built on human logic that I've built over 30 years of doing this work. It's built on research, it's built on clinical reasoning. So, you know, I know we sort of strayed away from the question that you asked, but I think
No, that's a great answer to the question, because the future, I think what I heard you say is the future still needs to include humans that have knowledge, and a lot of times we don't know why we know what we know. In fact, we can't even tell you why we think, hey, this is what I think you should do, because we're doing this algorithmic thing without knowing that we're doing it. That's how we make decisions as humans. And
mhm,
so when you go see your practitioner, you're going to have some guidance that they can't even explain how they learned what they learned over the past, whether it's 8 years and they're fresh out of school, or it's 30 years and they've been out of school for a long time. And I don't think anything that you said is a critique of what AI can add, but it's a tool that does not supplant things. And the tool
right.
that you've built is not supplanted by what AI is doing. That's, at
No,
least that's my interpretation of everything you shared, which
no,
I
I
think is
think you're
a
absolutely
great
right.
parting explanation for patients to say all the tools we have are important and
Yeah,
none of them can replace another. So,
yeah. I think one of the most exciting things, like you, I've been around the block for a while, is that I think with the roles that some of the functional medicine influencers are playing out there, functional medicine is finally getting its day in the sunlight. And I
yep,
think it's really exciting. I think it's a really exciting time to be in this space. I think patients are excited about the possibility that there is an option out there that isn't just about waiting until you have a disease.
right.
So I think it's a really awesome time to be a functional medicine practitioner. I think it's also a really difficult time to be a functional medicine practitioner. And I think it's about, finding that lane that works for you, using the tools that make you a better clinician and a better servant to your patients that you're there to serve. And I think that, selfishly, I think that Optimal DX actually is one of those tools that you really probably should take a look at.
It certainly sounds like it is. It sounds like
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fun conversation,
Yeah. We
Mr.
should do it
Weatherby. I
again.
really
I
enjoyed
think
it.
there's a lot more
Yeah,
to
for
talk
sure.
about.
That's right. That's right. Thank you again for coming. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. Join us again next week and look into seeing if you can persuade your practitioner to use this tool because it will
Yeah,
help you. It will help them help you.
awesome. Thank you, Dr. Petersen.
Thank you for joining us on the Forum Health Integrative Medicine podcast. Each episode, we help you understand your health from every angle and inspire your lifelong wellness journey. Follow the show, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a review, and take the next step toward feeling your best at forumhealth.com.